Hi, my name is Andy Friedman. I'm a partner in the law firm Friedman, Rosenwasser, and Goldbaum. Today I'm going to be talking about franchising your business. So this session is geared for people or company who are looking to expand their business through franchising. To begin, let's talk about what is franchising. Franchising is a method of distributing goods or services under a uniform system of operations under a single trademark or under the franchisor's trademark. In a franchise system, the franchisor licenses to the franchisee the franchisor's trademarks and system of operations. The primary advantages to franchising your business as opposed to other methods of expanding your business is that you, number one, use other people's money to grow your business, and number two, you have an operator of your outlet who has a vested interest in the success or failure of that business. One of the first questions some of my prospective franchisor clients ask is my business franchisable? Well, on the basic level, in order to be franchisable, the business should be fairly simple and easy to duplicate. Now, what types of businesses are franchisable? The answer, almost any type. Today in the U.S. we have over 5,000 different franchises that are available. So we have franchises in the financial services industry, children's products and services, business-to-business franchises, business-to-consumer franchises, part-time franchises, full-time franchises, home-based franchises, etc. So no matter what type of business you're in, your business could be franchisable if it meets some of the other business requirements. When determining whether your business is franchisable, my advice is to look at a number of different factors. The first one is the business profitable? Because if its business is not profitable, there's no sense trying to expand it and to sell franchises. Another factor will be how easily is it to duplicate your business or your business model? And the answer there is, well, how much training is going to be involved to train someone to operate the business the way you do? If it's going to be too complicated or too lengthy of a training, it's probably not a franchisable business. Another thing you need to consider is whether or not you're willing to give up a certain degree of control over how your business is operated. Let's turn now to the laws that regulate franchising. If you're going to franchise your business in the United States, you have to be aware of both the federal laws on franchising as well as state laws. Under the federal law, you're going to have to prepare and provide to prospective franchisees a franchise disclosure document, or FDD, which contains 23 items of information. Some of my clients want to avoid the franchise laws because they want to avoid the expense and compliance requirements under the franchise laws. But in most cases, if the business is going to be expanded using a common trademark and common system of operations, it will probably fall under the definition of a franchise under the Federal Trade Commission rule on franchising. So let's look at the definition of franchising. Under the federal law, it's pretty simple. It's a three-part test. And if you have all three aspects in your business model, then you're going to be a franchise regardless of how you call this relationship. So the first element is trademark. If you're going to license a third party to use your trademark or trademark, you have met the first element of the definition. The second element is the payment of a fee. And under the federal law, it's the payment of $500 or more at any time between the date the franchisee signs the franchise agreement and 6 months after the franchisee has operated the business. Most franchisors are not going to wait 6 months or more before they receive any money from the franchisee. So most people that want to expand their business through licensing or franchising are going to require some fee up front or within the first 6 months. The third element of the definition of a franchise is two parts. So if the franchisor either provides significant assistance to the franchisee, or if the franchisor controls or has the right to control aspects of the franchisee's business, then that meets the third element of the definition of a franchise. If you're going to license someone to use your trademark, then I submit you are going to want to have strict controls over how that person operates the business under your trademark. Also, you will typically be providing the franchisee with significant assistance in the form of training and marketing programs and things like that, so that in most cases, when a client comes to me and they want to expand their business, we're going to look at the franchise model. And even if they want to avoid it, it's going to be difficult to avoid without sacrificing some of the benefits of franchising for the franchisor. At the state level, there are two different types of laws that regulate franchising. The first are registration laws. So there are about 15 states in the United States where you have to register your franchise disclosure document or register your franchise with a state authority before you can offer franchises in those states. Some states also have what they call relationship laws that govern the relationship between a franchisor and franchisee. Those laws generally prohibit a franchisor from terminating a franchisee without good cause or without some notice and opportunity to cure and things like that. Okay, so what are the first steps we need to take in order to franchise your business? Well, the first one is you need to create a budget. Clients come to me and say, well, how much is it going to cost to franchise? Well, there's different factors that go into that. Obviously, from my point of view, there's the legal cost of preparing the franchise disclosure document. You will also have a cost in preparing an operations manual. Now, it's not required that a franchisor have an operations manual, but every franchise system that I'm aware of has one. And the franchise operations manual is basically a detailed manual of how to operate the business from opening the door to closing at night. One of the first things I tell my clients to do if they want to expand their business through franchising is to register their trademark. Now, it's not legally required to have a federal trademark registration for your trademark before you franchise, but there are additional benefits that you get by having a federally registered trademark. And the process takes quite a long time. It'll take you 9 months or a year or longer to get your trademark registered. So I always tell clients, let's get that started at the earliest possible date. Another thing you're going to need to consider is creating these training and operations manuals. So you can do this yourself, or there are consultants that prepare these operations manuals for you. If you hire a third party to prepare these, you're going to have to create a budget for that expense. Another expense that you're going to have is for your website. While you may have a fine website now, you're going to have to, at a minimum, add another tab on franchise and explain the whole franchising process and utilize your website the best you can to help market your franchise. Another factor that you're going to have to consider initially is what are going to be the advertising and marketing materials that you're going to offer to the franchisee in order to help them grow their business. Next, you're probably going to want to create construction plans and floor plans and design plans if it's a retail location, because you want each franchise location to look the same. So each one will have the same or similar floor plans, colors, trade dress, and things like that. And another thing you'll want to do is to negotiate with your suppliers the best prices, because you're going to tell your suppliers, well, I may only have 3 or 4 or 5 units now, but we're going to franchise, and in 5 years we're going to have 500 units, and I want the best price available. So you're going to want to negotiate purchasing with your vendors. So when you create your franchise program, there's a lot of factors that you're going to have to consider. For example, what is the initial franchise fee that you're going to charge to the franchisee? Well, there's a number of different factors that go into that. First of all, you've got, of course, competition. If you're going to charge $100,000 for a franchise fee and everyone else in the industry is charging $20,000, I submit you're not going to sell too many franchises. You should also know that the initial franchise fee is not really a profit center for the franchisor. The way I look at it, if you can recoup your training costs and your selling costs in selling that franchise with the payment of or receipt of the franchise fee, then I think you've achieved your objective. Where the franchisor should be making its money is on the royalty fees. So next we need to consider, well, what are we going to charge for a royalty fee? Again, a lot of factors can go into that. competition is going to be one of them. But you need to have a royalty fee that will, number one, allow you to make a profit on servicing and helping out franchisees. On the other hand, you can't make it too high so that the franchisee cannot be profitable. Because if the franchisee is not profitable and successful, then you will not be successful. So keep that in mind when setting these fees. Some clients, set these on their own, and others hire franchise consultants to help them with some of these issues. We're going to also have to decide on what advertising and marketing requirements we're going to impose on the franchisees. So typically you're going to impose a grand opening requirement that the franchisee is going to have to spend a certain amount of money on the grand opening of the business. You may require the franchisee to spend a certain minimum dollar amount or percentage of gross sales on local advertising. And you may want to establish a marketing fund where all franchisees and company-owned units contribute to a common marketing fund that the franchisor typically administers and uses for the benefit of the system as a whole. Another important factor to decide is how are you going to divide up territories for your franchisees? And this is going to vary. If you have a retail business, you may decide, well, we're going to give a franchisee an exclusive territory of 1 mile or 3 miles or so many miles from the franchisee's location. In a service business, let's say it's a signs franchise, the territories are going to typically be larger. And we also need to decide whether or not we're going to allow a franchisee to market their services outside of their outside of their territory. Another thing I want to think about is what's the term of the franchise agreement. Most franchise agreements are 5 years or 10 years. I've seen some recently that are 20 years, but most are 5 and 10 years, where the franchisee has the right to renew the franchise agreement for another 5 or 10 years as long as they meet certain requirements. So we need to think about what's the term of the agreement. Obviously, you need to make it long enough so that the franchisee can recoup their initial expenses and make a profit over some length of time. The next factor we're going to consider is what are the computer, hardware, and software requirements that you're going to impose on the franchisee, what kind of warranty or customer service requirements you may impose, what kind of non-competes, non-disclosure covenants you're going to impose. And an important consideration today is how are you going to handle social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, things like that. Some franchisors control all of that social media from the corporate headquarters and do not allow the franchisees to make postings on their own. Other franchisors give the franchisees leeway as long as the franchisee adheres to the franchisor's social media policies, which will say things like you cannot post anything of a political, religious, or offensive nature. So there are a number of different models that you can use to franchise your business. The first one and simplest one, and what I'm going to recommend initially for my franchise clients, is a single unit franchise agreement where you grant to one person or one company the right to franchise your business from a single location or from a single geographic territory. The next business model would be a multi-unit franchise where you allow a person or entity to open multiple units or to operate multiple territories. There's nothing really special about multi-unit territories or multi-unit agreements other than in some systems the franchisor will give the franchisee a discount on the initial franchise fee after the first franchise. The theory being that franchisee has already been trained and it's already been sold, so you're not going to really incur the selling and training expenses again, and so you can reduce the initial franchise fee for that reason. The next way to grow your business is through area representative agreements. I'm not in favor of these. Area representatives basically are just salespeople for you in a particular geographic area, and the franchisee or the area representative usually will share in some of the initial franchise fee and maybe the ongoing royalty fees in exchange for finding you franchises in that geographic area. A better business model and popular business model is what they call area development agreements. And an area development program, you're going to grant to a person or an entity the right to open up multiple units within a geographic area, or the right to solicit, screen franchisees in that geographic area. The area developer will provide usually the initial training for those franchisees in the territory, as well as ongoing support. In exchange for that, the franchisor and area developer will share in the initial franchise fees and ongoing royalty fees. This has become one of the most popular and quickest way to grow a franchise system. However, I would caution for a new franchisor, I recommend only single unit franchises until you have a little bit more experience in the franchise relationship, and then you can move on towards area development program. Finally, the last business model I'll talk about is sub-franchising. We don't do that too much in the United States. We do it when we have a client that's going to franchise in another country typically. And in master franchising or sub-franchising, the sub-franchisor stands in your shoes. The sub-franchisor would have to create the franchise disclosure document. They would have to sell the franchises. They would train. They would provide the support and all of that. And again, there's a split of the franchise fees and royalty fees between the franchisor and the sub-franchisor. The downside to this arrangement, in my opinion, is in a sub-franchise relationship, the franchisor does not have a contract with the franchisee. There's no direct relationship. The contract is between the franchisor, sub-franchisor, and the franchisee. So you have a little bit less control. So in most cases, we do not recommend sub-franchising for our clients within the United States. So how do you go about marketing or selling franchises? Well, there are a number of different avenues that you can use, and you're probably going to use more than one. So traditionally we had trade shows, and trade shows for a while fell out of favor, but I see a resurgence in the use of trade shows. The downside of trade shows is they're fairly expensive. You have the cost of the booth, you have the cost of the materials, you have to have somebody man the trade show, the travel expense, etc. So it's fairly expensive. But some franchisors find it beneficial, in particular a new franchisor may be a good way for you to get your name out there in the community in which the franchise show is being held. Another traditional way to advertise or market your franchises is through print media. So maybe the Wall Street Journal or USA Today or Entrepreneur Magazine, some of these other magazines, where you can advertise your franchises for sale. Again, these are fairly expensive, and I'm not sure the return on investment is worth it in most cases. So not too many of my clients really use print media too much for advertising. Another way to sell your franchises is you can conduct seminars. You might want to book a hotel room and advertise on the radio, newspaper in the local area. Hey, we're going to have a seminar, and how to buying this particular franchise. So that's one way to do it. Another way, of course, is the internet, and that's become the most popular way of advertising or marketing franchises through the internet. Not only through your own franchisor website and search engine optimization, but there are so-called franchise portals that really market and advertising a whole bunch of franchises on their site, and you pay a fee for being on the site, either pay-per-click or something like that, to advertise your franchises, and that's a good way to get leads for selling your franchises. And finally, you can use franchise brokers to help sell your franchises. So the franchise broker will go out and try to recruit franchises for you. They will do some of the due diligence for you in screening a prospective franchisee to make sure they're a qualified prospect and nobody's wasting their time. And then you will typically pay the franchise broker a commission for selling a franchise, similar to paying a real estate broker for selling your house. So that's actually become more popular lately, using franchise brokers. I think that's a good use of your marketing dollars. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the process of selling the franchises. So the first thing that happens, you get an inquiry from a franchise prospect, whether it was on the internet or a franchise broker or wherever. First thing you're going to want to do is send that prospect, besides your marketing materials maybe, a franchisee questionnaire or application, including a requirement that the franchisee provide you with their financial statements. because you need to qualify that franchisee just as the franchisee should be trying to qualify you to make sure it's a good fit. Most franchisors establish a system where they have certain touch points. So again, you have the initial email maybe went to the client, or a phone call, and you followed up with marketing materials, you followed up with the application. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to provide the franchisee with a disclosure document. Keep in mind, as we said earlier, in certain states you have to register your franchise before you can even offer a franchise in that state. So hopefully you've already done your registrations. You get the application, you give the franchisee the franchise disclosure document, you get a receipt for that franchise disclosure document, and you engage in ongoing conversations, correspondence with the franchisee. And the next event really is you will have what is known as Discovery Day. So you will invite the prospective franchisee to your home headquarters to meet the other franchisor personnel. Maybe put on a dog and pony show, as they say, and explain to the franchisee what it's all about. And again, it's important sometimes to have these face-to-face meetings to get a comfort level with the relationship. One of the biggest problems I see with my clients is that they're too quick to award a franchise to someone who's really not either qualified or is not a good fit for that franchise system. You really need to be particular with who you sell a franchise to, because if the franchisee is not successful, then you will not be successful. And this is particularly true in a new franchise system. If some of your first franchisees are not successful, I don't think you're going to be franchising very long. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the ongoing relationship after you've sold the franchise, the franchisee has signed the franchise agreement. From the legal side, the franchise agreement is going to control the relationship. And typically the franchise agreement is going to be pretty one-sided in favor of the franchisor and give you a lot of control over how the franchisee operates their business. More important than the legal relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee is the business or personal relationship. The franchisor should recognize and acknowledge that the franchisee has often invested their life savings into this business. And you need to treat the franchisee as a business partner rather than as an employee, because again, if they're not successful, then you're not going to be successful. And too many times franchisors are too concerned with whether or not the franchisee paid their royalty fees on time than whether or not the franchisee is successful. For example, the franchisor should be receiving from the franchisee periodic financial statements from the franchisee. And I think it's important that the franchisor or its CFO review these financials to determine or to find problems before they get worse. So for example, if you see that the franchisee is starting to lose money, or let's say it's a restaurant franchise and you see that their labor costs are going too high as a percentage of sales, or their food costs are going too high, you can step in and help them before things get worse. And unfortunately, most franchisors do not focus so much on the franchisee's profitability, but focus more on the franchisor's profitability. And I think that's backwards. I think if the franchisee is profitable, then the franchisor is going to be profitable. So that's what you need to focus on, franchisee unit performance, as opposed to worrying about, did the franchisee pay my royalty fee on time? This concludes this session on franchising your business. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me by email or visit our website, franchiselaw.com. Thank you.